Thanks to a serious injury, I found the meaning of life. After a serious injury, life did not end, but became even more valuable. I promised myself I will stand on my own feet, even if they are not the same as before. I will live life like never before, and by fighting fate, I will learn to enjoy each day again. I hope this inspires you as much as it inspired me. I'm going to tell you my story, and you can imagine us sitting in a local cafe, ordering coffee, and just sharing our lives. So, I grew up in a neighborhood where the street was full of hopes and shattered dreams. I had a normal family, albeit with hardships. My dad worked in a factory and my mom worked at the local laundromat. I can't say it was easy, but, we always found ways to smile. As a teenager, life started to fall through the cracks. My dad developed depression because of his job, and my mom, trying to support the family, started working more. I was lonely and eventually drifted into useless hobbies, smoking, drinking, idleness. With this atmosphere of despair around, it could be hard to see anything bright. One day, something inside me clicked. I realized that I couldn't go on like this. Every morning I woke up depressed before taking another smoke inhalation and falling into lethargic days. I started looking for a job, as if that was going to save me. I started with a weak position at a local store, working the cash register for pennies and trying to figure out what to do next with my life. Then one day after my shift, some friends came over and we decided to go for a drive. We got some booze and went for a drive. We drove around, drinking, joking and laughing. It was a marvel. We were overtaking cars, going into oncoming lanes. We were having fun. It seemed like all the bad things were behind us, and only the endless road and the bright lights of the city were ahead. Nothing mattered but our freedom, as if the world outside the window simply didn't exist. I felt like I was living again, and this carefree atmosphere filled me with energy. At one of the turns, we decided to overtake the car ahead of us. I was driving, and it was important not to let my friends down. I considered the situation. There were few cars on the road, and maybe we could add a little speed. Turning on my turn signal, I changed lanes abruptly. The cab we were about to overtake was traveling slowly, and in no time we were side by side. I couldn't help but feel the adrenaline kicking in. But at that moment, I was out of control. I was too caught up in the adventure and didn't notice that another car had appeared on the opposite side of the road. It was speeding toward us, and there was a sense of disaster in the air. I tried to take control, but everything happened so fast. The bright headlights, the sharp turn of the steering wheel, the screams of my friends, and then silence. I remember everything spinning and going dark. In that split second when I realized things weren't going according to plan, it was like the world around me started to slow down. It was like a dream that wouldn't end. And so, when I came to my senses again, I didn't immediately realize what had happened. There was chaos all around me, a wrecked car, mangled doors, the smell of burning rubber and gasoline. I was in shock, not realizing where the laughter and fun had gone. There was silence inside the car. I tried to turn around to my friends and my heart sank with fear. There was no shouting, no sudden movements. Everyone was silent, and I felt goosebumps run down my back. And then I felt that I couldn't move my left leg. It was jammed. Soon medics and police arrived on the scene. When they pulled me out of the car, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I saw that I was in a ward and no one was around. I tried to get up and then I saw something that shocked me. There was no leg below the knee. Everything around me froze, and the world seemed to have fallen into a sepulchral silence. I couldn't believe my eyes. Instead of the familiar ankle and foot, only a white canvas covering the bandage and void. My heart beat faster, as if trying to break through the shroud of despair. Legs that had once been strong were now unreachable. All the voices around me became unintelligible, and I felt fear again. I wondered, what now? My life was forever changed. What would happen to my dreams? All the simple pleasures now seemed unattainable. I felt my eyes begin to darken and I lost consciousness again. When I regained consciousness again, several people were gathered around me. They were doctors, nurses, and finally my mom. She looked worried and tears glistened on her cheeks. It made my heart flutter again. I didn't want to see her like this. I didn't want her to worry about me. I opened my mouth to say something reassuring, but I couldn't get a word out. The doctors started talking about my injury. They explained that, unfortunately, my leg had to be amputated because of the serious damage and that I would have a long recovery. I listened to them, but I had the feeling that this was not about me, but about some other person who wanted to escape from his nightmare. The whole world gradually began to fade, as if it no longer mattered. Inevitably, of course, came the moments when I wanted to give up. Days passed in a ward surrounded by white walls and the smell of antiseptic. I was in a confinement where every moment became an ordeal. My mom came in every day, bringing me fresh flowers and telling me stories about how everything was going to be okay. She always knew what to say, but no matter how hard she tried, it was hard for me to accept her optimism. I was taken to rehab, and every step I took with my new prosthesis was hell. It was like I was learning to walk all over again. I knew I couldn't give up. I couldn't let this injury take away what I loved. Every time I got back on my feet, the despair would hit with renewed vigor. But at some point, I realized that wrestling is not just about physically getting back on my feet. It's also about inner courage, the ability to cope and start again. I began to slowly accept my new self and bring something positive into my life. Little by little, I started to come out of my shell. During one of my rehabilitation sessions, I met another patient who had also experienced severe trauma. We started talking and his life-affirming attitude became an inspiration to me. He told me how he overcame difficulties and how important it was to remember that life goes on, even when everything seems to stop. It was a real gift to be around someone who hasn't given up and you can find support and understanding. I started reading books that inspired me. I read about people who overcame their challenges and went forward. One book in particular stood out in my memory, about a man who lost everything but found his passion in drawing. It made me question my own passions. I've always loved music, but never thought I could write my own songs. I started experimenting with a guitar that had been gathering dust in my corner. Primitive, of course, but it was my therapy. I started writing lyrics about my life, about my struggles, and how I'm trying to find light in the midst of darkness. And it became an outlet for all the stuff that had built up inside. Every chord I strummed and every line I wrote down helped me understand myself better. Some melodies were born spontaneously, while others required long hours of agony. At first I was shy to share my compositions with anyone, but then, happily bringing my guitar under my arm, I began to show my works to my friends. Their support and sincere feedback gave me strength, and I felt that there really was a place for me in this world of music. There were days when I felt isolated and lost again. But every time I returned to the music, it renewed hope in me again. The feeling that I could influence my life, conquer these demons, it was priceless. Finally, after a while, I decided to perform at an open mic at a nearby bar. It was my first step into a world I had only dreamed of. The night of the performance arrived, and I felt a growing excitement in my chest. This wasn't just a performance, it was a challenge, an opportunity to get to know myself from a different side. As I walked into the bar, I was greeted by the sweet smell of beer and conversation wafting from a crowd of people who looked relaxed and carefree. There was a man sitting on stage with a guitar and the audience was buzzing. Sitting at the table, I looked at the other speakers. Each of them had their own story, their own experiences, and they were sharing them through the music. But what really struck me was how confident they looked, like they knew what they were doing. I wondered if my music could also hook someone, if it would evoke emotions like mine. My turn came. I stepped up to the microphone and started singing. As I stood on stage, my heart was pounding like never before. The lyrics of the first song were about suffering and transition, my fall and rise. And when I sang, it was like I was freeing myself from a burden that had been weighing me down for a long time. Every word came out from the depths of my soul, and I felt like I suddenly had a real connection with people on stage. As I played my songs, I noticed people in the audience starting to sing along, raising their hands. It was something incredible. Those moments connected us and showed that I was not alone. In that moment, despair was leaving, I realized that my struggle was not in vain, and there were people around me who were also looking for hope. When I finished, the auditorium froze for a moment and then applause broke out. I felt pride and joy fill my heart, as if a warm ray of sunlight had broken through the darkness. I couldn't believe that all these people, including even strangers, appreciated my music and my story. That's how my life slowly began to change. After that first gig, offers started coming to me, gigs at local clubs, competitions. I learned not only how to find support in the music community, but also how to help others. Every time I saw new artists take the stage, it brought back memories of how I started. My musical journey became more than just a hobby, it became a goal. I started sharing my story, and it helped many others feel like they weren't alone. One day someone even said that my song helped them deal with depression. I realized that all the hardship and despair I went through was part of something bigger. And you know what? After going through it all, I realized that despair can be a gracious teacher. It has taught me to appreciate every moment. Now sadness doesn't weigh on me, but rather serves as an important reminder of how far I've come. Hope finds its place among all the clouds, and it shines brighter than ever. Life has not ended, but has become even more precious. I promised myself I will stand on my own 2 feet, even if they aren't what they used to be. I will live like never before, and by fighting fate, I will learn to enjoy each day again. So that's my story. I hope it inspires you as much as it inspired me.